What have you seen in Ukraine? How does being there inform your understanding of this story?
Well, I think almost everyone who wants to leave has left, and that means that the people who are here are determined to fight for Ukraine, and they mean that seriously as you can. I'm incredibly moved by, stories of middle-aged women that I've met who are determined to stay here to the end, even if it means a shootout with Russian troops who are somewhere to the north, little to the north of where I am right now. And I think whatever you feel about this situation, the rights and wrongs, how it happened, Putin's invasion, the generally bad US meddling of the last 15 to 20 years, the people on the ground here love their country and they're willing to fight for their country in every way possible.
Whether they fight on or whether they... Sorry, Mark, I was just going to say, whether they fight on, whether they decide to negotiate a peace treaty, that's their decision, isn't it? I mean, I know there's lots of voices off, people who would urge them to do either of those things, but at the end of the day, it's for them to decide whether they want to cut a deal with Putin or fight on.
Well, I think I had a long-time viewer and reader of mine who made what struck me as quite a smart comment, where he said the West wants Ukraine to fight its war for it, and Ukraine wants the West to fight its war for it. And then as I thought about it, I thought, well, no, one half of that isn't true. I think it's true that there are warmongering nitwits, particularly from the bipartisan war party in Washington, which was obviously humiliated in Afghanistan and wants a kind of victory on the cheap, with Ukrainians doing all the heavy lifting. And I regard those people as completely contemptible. I think the American way of war doesn't work. It hasn't worked really for 75 years or so. And they need to go somewhere. They need to go on a big retreat somewhere in the mountains of Montana or Wyoming and rethink the whole business. Whereas on the Ukrainian end, they'd like help. They'd like weapons, they'd like a no-fly zone, but if not, screw the lot of you. That's basically Zelensky's attitude. He spoke to the Canadian House of Commons, and they listened to him very politely, and they all said what a great man he was, and they applauded, and then they didn't change their position. And he says, okay, so that's fine. It doesn't matter. Whatever we've got, and we will fight on alone.
The fact he's addressing the House of Commons in Canada, the fact he's addressing the US Congress, Mark, it all builds up this mythology around Zelensky. And it's not just an ego trip for him. This stuff matters in this sense that I come back to this idea, if he decides to cut a peace deal, when leaders cut peace deals, and we may be some way off from that yet, there are often people, more hawkish people in government or outside of government who say, you can't sell us down the river, don't be running up the white flag. He's become such a massive figure, Zelensky, that if he decides the moment is ripe for peace, he will almost certainly get his way.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about that. When I look at this 15-point peace plan that is supposedly in play right now, there are elements of that that are certainly going to be problematic for people on the ground in Ukraine. What is surprising to me, because where I'm sitting right now has been part of almost everything. It's been part of the Kingdom of Hungary, the Habsburg Empire. It's been part of Czechoslovakia. It's been part of the Soviet Union. And what's actually incredible to me is that in 3 decades, I think there has been undoubtedly a sense of Ukrainian nationalism that is stronger than at any point in human history. And they do not want to go back either into a Soviet prison, no matter how temptingly Putin may appear to construct it, But they don't even think that a kind of Finlandization or Austrian neutrality is anywhere they want to go. They regard themselves as part of the European family, as part of the community of nations of Europe. Now, if you're sitting in Belgium, if you're sitting in the Netherlands, if you're sitting in London or Washington, you might say, well, tough, you guys got to suck it up. Well, they don't want to suck it up. And that's kind of admirable because, to be honest, the kind of patriotic spirit you find on the ground here, I would occasionally like to see in the UK or in the US or in Canada, because it is as fierce and primal as anything I've seen in quite a while, certainly in a European country where most of them are post-national.